Now, corruption costs South Africa at least 27 billion rand in lost GDP every year and as many as 100,000 jobs. The blunt assessment from the Trade, Industry and Competition Minister, Ibrahim Patel. Now, what does corruption mean? Well, not just redirecting resources from an anonymous state, but also killing honest businesses and taking away jobs from real people. If that doesn't make you hopping mad, it should. So another now in our series, The State We're In, as I'm joined by Dludlu, former Sowetan editor and now heading the Small Business Institute. John, good afternoon to you. Before we get to the state of corruption, you would have seen those GDP figures today. They are eye-watering, a contraction of over 50%. That is really going to hurt small business, isn't it?
Jeremy, it's a very depressing figure, but not surprising. I think we were expecting it because of what has been happening in the economy even before COVID started. We're already in a technical recession. Yeah, it's a bloodbath. Minimally, about 1.5 million jobs, I think, would have been lost by the end of this year. So let's forget about that. We are talking about livelihoods. We're talking about income. We're talking about hunger growing and hardship growing in an already depressed economic situation. So I believe today or tomorrow, sometime this week, the president would have met leaders of business, labor, and civil society to discuss, amongst others, how do we engineer a very quick rebound of the economy.
John, I invited you on this afternoon to talk about the impact of corruption on small business. So let's get there now, and I do appreciate the comments on the GDP numbers. As far as corruption is concerned, how badly is this sector affected, and is it powerless to act against this rampant scourge that we see?
It is very bad, Jeremy. There are people who are getting out of business just because they are very discouraged that the only way of getting something done in our country these days is through oiling, greasing, and palming someone's hands. So we're destroying jobs, we're destroying incomes, livelihoods, we're also destroying the job creators in our country. So we're ending up now with a class of job seekers. So it's bad. Does it have to be like this? It doesn't have to be like this. There are jurisdictions in the world where corruption has been kept under control. For example, I mean, it was quite tragic that the president of the ANC and the president of the country writes to members. And then there's a huge controversy around a very simple thing that the governing party has been mired in corruption. Now, let's take one leader, President Xi Jinping. He is very decisive about dealing with corruption. We don't need permission to deal with corruption. We just have to act on corruption. In China, you would not find a leader begging members to act appropriately.
There was a suggestion in Business Day, I think it was this morning, from one commentator that corruption in many respects is akin to treason.
That's one characterization, but I like what Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, the head of the WHO, has characterized it as murder. If you're stealing PPE, and if you're delivering substandard PPE, that is tantamount to actually killing those health workers, those frontline workers in our country. I think corruption, treason is fine, but I don't think it's got a sense of shock enough. Murder shocks all of us. Corruption must be treated the same way. It must shock us into action. So I prefer to characterize it as murder. We're killing each other through corruption.
That is food for thought for the next 24 hours. Part 2 of our conversation on the state we're in with John Dludlu tomorrow, former editor of the Sowetan newspaper, now with the Small Business Institute.